How often do you find yourself in a situation where you're having an argument with someone over something irrelevant, like not complimenting your partner's outfit or not appreciating the meal your mom made? To you, these might sound stupid, but if you stop for a moment and consider that argument from the other person's point of view, you'll understand why you two are arguing. Perhaps your partner spent a whole night choosing an outfit just to look appealing for you, and you didn't even compliment it. Maybe your mom took a day off from work to have some free time, and she spent some of it making your favorite childhood meal, but you had to say you didn't like it just because it wasn't salty enough. Today, we're going to talk about a life-changing method you can use in your everyday life to avoid arguments while making stronger bonds with people. There's a special term for people who refuse to see from the point of view of others. They're called egocentrics. Egocentrics are also known for their lack of empathy and only suggesting self-centered solutions. They behave just like little kids do. A good example is when a kid wants to paint on the wall. In most cases, their parents won't allow it for obvious reasons, but the kid can't and won't understand that. Egocentrics simply view other people's experiences from their own perspective. If you're this kind of person, don't have high hopes. Your relationships won't last and they won't be strong. And neither will any other aspect of your life because you aren't alone on this planet. Your business will never succeed, you won't be a good employer, and other companies won't be able to make a deal with you. Your kids will grow up closed off. They'll be scared by social anxiety. Being a parent carries a huge responsibility, and you wouldn't want to be a bad father or mother, right? But if you're the person who takes time to look at the situation from the perspective of another person and works to be a problem solver, your relatives, friends, and colleagues will like you, and your relationships with them will become stronger and stronger each day. Looking at things from the other person's point of view is also known as nice manipulation. Some people use it to work out things in their favor while being realistic and not self-centered. And I've got a story that happened a while ago that should paint a detailed picture of this statement in your head. About 100 years ago, the average price of a car was $2,700. A woman named Elizabeth Novak decided to buy a new car in installments. A few months later, she was 6 weeks late on her payment, so she received what she called a nasty phone call from the man who worked in the dealership where she bought the car and was handling her account. He told her she had to come up with the $122 she owed by Monday morning or the dealership would be forced to take her car. Elizabeth knew she had zero chance of raising the money over the weekend. When Monday morning came, she got a call from the same man and expected the worst. But instead of getting upset, she looked at things from his point of view. Elizabeth bought the car convincing the dealership her payments wouldn't be late, and yet she was 6 weeks late. The dealership had all the right to be mad because she was making them trouble. And that's exactly what she said once she picked up that call. She apologized most sincerely for causing so much inconvenience and said that she was probably the most troublesome customer as this was not the first time Elizabeth was behind on her payments. The man's voice immediately changed after she said this. He started reassuring her that she was far from being one of the really troublesome customers. He went on to tell several examples of how rude the customers sometimes were, how they lie, and often tried to avoid talking to him at all. He was lashing out the anger caused by the troublesome customers on her while she was quietly listening to him. Then all of a sudden, he said it did not matter if she couldn't pay all the money immediately, and that it would be all right if Elizabeth paid him $20 by the end of the month and made up the balance whenever it was convenient for her to do so. So just because Elizabeth put herself into his shoes and was a good listener on top of that, she bought herself some more time to come up with the money she owed and made a bond with that dealership man. If she successfully did this, what makes you think you can't do the same for some smaller things? Maybe you don't know where to start from or how to compromise things so that no one gets the short end of the stick. Don't worry, we'll go over some important things you must work on if you want to become a better version of yourself, for you and for others. I hope you clicked that like button if you came this far. Now, before we move on, we must mention group arguments, which are far worse because things can get heated quickly. When more than two people are arguing, involved individuals, as well as those who are trying their best not to get into the argument, will often take sides and say nonsense things just to defend their side. That's once again a result of childish, immature behavior. To obtain a realistic assessment of common and opposed interests, it's necessary to see the situation from the perspective of the other parties. In every argument, no matter how many people are involved, there needs to be a realistic assessment of common and opposed interests and conclusions. If people involved in an argument cannot take the perspective of opponents, then their understanding of the issue is limited and incomplete, and the solutions to the argument will be the same: limited and incomplete. So, in order to find the best solutions, you must become perspective taking. Social perspective taking is the ability to understand how a situation appears to another person and how that person is reacting with a focus on their emotions. Basically, a complete opposite of egocentrism. There are a few important factors when it comes to perspective taking. First, you must understand that everyone involved in an argument has a unique perspective. No two people will see a situation or issue in exactly the same way, even if they are the smallest differences. Once you're fine with that, think about how we choose our life paths and how we deal with life problems. Our life paths are dependent on our perspective. Maybe your perspective tells you that being a doctor is an exhausting and boring profession, but someone who became a doctor had a totally different view on it. They saw it as something relaxing, an opportunity to help people, so they became a doctor because of the way they looked at it. All experiences are understood within the perspective in which they are viewed. People tend to see only what their perspective allows them to see. Change a person's perspective and you change what the person focuses on and the way the person interprets the events in their life. Perspectives, furthermore, can create bias. Out of a mass of detailed information, people tend to pick out and focus on those facts that confirm their prior perceptions and disregard or misinterpret those that call their perceptions into question. A guy obsessed with adrenaline will buy a fast car even though its maintenance is expensive, he will spend a lot of money on fuel, may get a lot of tickets, and could even die if he's not careful. But he doesn't care about that, he just knows that car will secure his daily dose of adrenaline. His father will think he's crazy for making such a bad decision, but once the father sinks into a midlife crisis, he might realize a fast sports car would be fun to try out. That's another one of the important factors. People can have different perspectives at different times. As your job role, experiences, assumptions, physiological states, and values change, your perspective will also change. You should always have in your mind that the same message can mean two entirely different things from two different perspectives. A person's perspective largely determines how a message will be interpreted, and that's the reason why people often have trouble communicating. The saying is true, people hear what they want to hear. Instead, you should focus on the words coming out of their mouth and not on your opinions based on your experiences. Until we see things from another person's perspective, we will never understand why things happen the way they do. Most of us like to make preconceived judgments, which can lead to arguments between friends, colleagues, and family. That's because we jump to conclusions too quickly and fail to see from another person's point of view. Seeing from another person's perspective helps you to understand things in a different light and opens up the path for a whole lot more of understanding and tolerance. Never assume that everyone sees things from the same perspective as you do, because that doesn't exist. Every perspective has some differences. If, as a result of watching this video, you get only one thing, let it be this: an increased tendency to think always in terms of the other person's point of view and see things from that person's angle as well as your own. If you get only that one thing from this video, it may easily prove to be one of the stepping stones of your relationships and career. And if you want to learn how to make new friends without talking whatsoever, click the video on the screen.